this video, we're going to focus on converting to fill type stitches. And these are the ones that are down here at the bottom that are in like stars, like standard fill, fancy fill, motif fill, gradient fill, color blend fill, wave gradient fill, wave color blend, and the mesh fill. Now, this is the only one that isn't in a star, but these are designs right here that are kind of more geared towards being a fill stitch. These can be a run stitch because pretty much most things can be converted to a run stitch. And you can see that that is in fact a running stitch here. And it doesn't have to be artwork to convert it to a fill. It can be regular stitches. And so just keep that in mind, that I can take this running stitch and convert it to a fill because it is a closed shape. So this run goes all the way around the perimeter, and because of that, it can be easily filled in. Now, if it was an open-ended run stitch, it might not work. So, or work well. So let's take a look at this, and we'll just look at the different types of fills that we have. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm just going to come down here to a regular fill. And when I click on this standard fill, it automatically puts in the start point, the end point, and the angle lines there, as you can see. So looking for the red dot here, there it is. It's starting there. It's ending there. The only thing I will say when you're using this tool is you'll want to pay attention to these, because you don't want it to, you want it to start in one end and go down to the bottom as much as you can. You want to eliminate the amount of times it'll jump around to fill the area. And you have to be kind of careful. Sometimes I'll angle it slightly so that it will actually, cover more of an area all at once. It's just something that you kind of play with. It's just, you don't have to do it. But start points and end points can really affect how something stitches out. So that's just your standard fill. You can look at other videos for how to change things like densities, underlays, and stuff like that. But this is just about converting it to the different types and what they are. So this one right here is a fancy fill. So if I click on it, it's going to input a fancy fill pattern. So the fancy fills you can see are over here. There's a bunch of different types that you can apply to it. Some will work, some won't. Most of them usually do. So it's kind of surprising that this one is kind of getting a hole in it. Let's take a look here. I'm not sure, why some of these aren't working, but anyway, these pattern fills, you want to use them sparingly. I think that when you first get started in embroidery, you think that, these would be really good to utilize in a design to give it a little texture and stuff. But I will say that the longer you get going with digitizing, creating designs, the less you'll use patterns like this, because they're pretty hard on the fabric, and they can end up kind of exposing more of the fabric because of the way that the stitches are created. So a lot of times you'll try to add more density, and it just is something that I rarely use, and but it is there. There are times where I'll utilize them. And you can choose a bunch of different types there's tons of pattern fills that you can choose from. And you can get very different, unique looks with them. And let's take a look at the next one is a motif fill. It's one that I will utilize more than a fancy fill. And you can choose any motif pattern to fill it with. And the cool thing is, since the software started adding mixed patterns, you can have two different patterns that alternate. So you can get some really cool effects. So this is using this pattern in this one, and you can change it to kind of whatever you want, and you can get a lot of different looks. It's kind of fun to work with. And you can change the pattern sizes. you can do a bunch of different things. The motif fills are kind of cool. They can be used on top of another fill to give the design a little bit more texture. And by that, I mean, if I copy and paste this, you'll see that I have the motif fill right here. And this one's also a motif fill, but I can change that over to a regular fill. And let me come down to this one right here, and let's just change the color of it. So you can see that fill, the motif fill, is over the top of the regular fill stitch. And you can get some pretty neat effects by doing that. Obviously you want to pick the right colors, but you can see how that works. It's kind of fun. So it's something you can do. The next one is the gradient fill. And I will just say this, kind of like I did in the previous video where I talked about the satin stitch, it's another one that is kind of meant to be, I'm going to paste two of them here. It's kind of meant to be utilized with another fill. So what I would do is create a fill stitch first for the first object here, just a regular fill stitch. And then the second one, I would choose a gradient, and I would definitely change the color of it. So you can see, if I zoom in here, that I have one color underneath. So one's blending into the other, and there's videos on how to work with gradients. Again, your start points and your end points and your angle lines are going to greatly affect how this looks. And I will say this, the other thing that you definitely want to keep in mind is when you're working with gradients and blends, color blends, stuff like that, it's best if you get the stitches all going in the same direction. So if you change the direction of the stitches for the gradient, you'll want to change them for the fill that's underneath too, to be in the same direction. Now this design isn't probably the best to work with a gradient because there's so many changing directions. And that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. But let's go ahead and grab a circle here and make it into an oval. And I'm going to copy it and paste it. And I'm going to make one of them that green color and one the blue color. So let's come over here and change this one to that greenish color. Maybe I'll do the lighter green. I'm going to convert both of them. Well, let's take the first one and convert that to a fill stitch. And let's take the second one and convert that to a gradient. And so you can get a better idea of how this kind of works. You want it to go in a continuous motion as much as you can. And so if I take a look at this one, we know what direction the stitches are going. They're going left to right. And I'm more going to focus on the start point and end point. You can see that it's starting here and ending here. I would actually want it to start at one end and work its way all the way down to the bottom. And that's going to give you just a better result. And same thing with this fill. If the other one's going to start up here, I might take this one, start it down here and end it up here so that the other one starts kind of where the other one leaves off. So you can see now is when you can learn more about gradients and how to manipulate the gradients. You can see you do have the gradient tab here, and there are different types of gradients that you can use. Some that are tighter in the middle and get lighter on the ends, some that are tighter on the edges and get lighter in the middle. There's all these different types of gradients, so you definitely want to play around with the gradient types. And again, you would select the gradient object and you'd go into the gradient tab to do that. So that's a gradient. Let's go ahead and select that one. It's this one right here. And I'll convert that back over to artwork. You can see I do have stitches underneath of it, which is fine. Because these next few, it just kind of works good to have stitches underneath. So the next one is color blend. And the color blend is going to utilize two colors, then you can blend them together, but it still is doing it kind of light in the fill area. So it is good to have a standard fill underneath. You just lighten the density a little bit. So let's go into this color blend, and you'll see when I click off that now I'm blending three colors together. I have the base color underneath, which is in that green color, and then I have this color blend here that's utilizing a blue and like this pinkish color. And you can see how cool of effect you can get with it. If I zoom out, you don't see it as much. And that's about 100%. So the things that you can do with that is, again, go to the gradient tab and you can change the styles. Like this is linear increasing and the other one's linear decreasing. So it automatically will do the opposite for the two colors. So meaning if I did convex for one, I'd do concave for the other. If I hit apply, you'll see how this affects it. So now you can see just how different that looks. So if I turn off this green, this is what it's actually creating with the two colors. It's doing a darker in here and it gets lighter for the blue. And then the this pink color here is darker on the edges and lighter in the middle. Now, the other thing with that is you do have the ability to edit things. So you have the ability to edit densities, for instance. So if I turn that down to 2.5 and hit apply, it's going to make it a little bit more dense. It's just something to, you'll want to play around with. But if I turn that green back on, you can see that I get a really cool, neat effect. So you can probably get some ideas for things that you might utilize this with. So that's kind of how you work with the color blend. So now let's take this color blend object again and let's convert it back to artwork. I'm still, you can see it's not filled in. I can fill it in so you can see it's over the top of the green. I can select this and now I can come down to the wave fill. And the wave fill is just that. It's this wave. I am going to change the density to 3 just so you can see it better. So you can see how that looks. I'll turn off the green under it. And this is the pattern that it creates. And that is just the density that, changing to give it that look. Now, there's a lot of different things you can do here. Right now, this is like a pattern, a line pattern. So that's why you see it like that. You can do it as a motif fill. So you can get in there and you can do some pretty neat little things with it. It's just, it's pretty cool. So you just want to play around with it. If you want to get back to the line, you just choose that line and hit OK. Now you'll see also that there is the ability to do mixed motifs. So I need to change this one to a motif, and then I can come in here and do a mixed motif, and I could choose something else for the second one, and you're going to see that it's going to repeat. It's going to do those two patterns there. That one doesn't look very good, but it's doing it. It's going to be hard to find one that would be really good for it, but you can see what I'm talking about here. Let me turn off the mixed, hit apply, and then I'm going to change this back to a line to show the standard way to use a wave fill. Now there will be more videos on working with wave fills. You can adjust the line that it follows just by going into the edit mode, and you just manipulate that line right there, and it allows you to create some different looks. So let's select this one again, and let's now look at the next one, which is a wave gradient. So this is similar to the regular gradient is just going to be following this path as it's doing the gradient. So let's come over to here. This is interesting. This hasn't really been talked about. So there was the update recently, and you can see that this bean style is set to none. But if I do the bean, I can do bean repeats here. This is something that I'm actually really glad I found this, because this was something that I'd put in to have done with the software, and I don't remember it being discussed. So if I go to 0.8, and that's for the density of this, I selected a 5 ply. That means it's going to follow this shape. It's basically going to be creating a bean fill stitch. So it's going to make each line thicker, if you can imagine that. Anyways, just something neat that I just noticed that I didn't see before. So let's go ahead and I'm going to change this back to a regular line pattern here. And I'm on the gradient, so here is where I can change the gradient type. I could have it be convex, so it'll be thicker in the middle and then work its way out. You can see it works similar to the regular gradient. It's just now the gradient's following that path shape. So the next one is a color blend. So before I do that though, let's turn on the green so you can kind of see that effect that it's given. Pretty cool, huh? So let's go ahead and turn off that green, and I'm going to select this one, and now I'm going to convert it to the next one over, which is a wave color blend. And this is basically the same thing as the color blend. It's incorporating two different colors, and let's take a look at this. Let's go into the linear increasing and linear decreasing. But the interesting thing here is it's doing the same thing. Let me change this one to linear increasing, and that's more like it. The start points and end points were off a little bit. So now it's thicker in the reddish color up here and thicker in the blue color down here, and then gets lighter. So I just kind of made that little modification. Let me turn on the green, and you'll see the look that you get. It's pretty cool. You'll have to play with it. And again, I'm at 200%, so this is more about 100%. But you can see the cool effects that you can get with using these features. So the last one that we have to look at is the mesh fill. Let me go ahead and click on mesh fill icon. And this is the default right here. When I come over here, this is where you can kind of change it. The stitch type says wave. You can change the type here, but if with wave selected, you can click this little 3-dot icons here. And what it does is brings up this dialog that you can select different mesh fills. Some of them are single lined, and some of them are in like a hatch shape. So like this one down here is kind of unique because it's kind of changing directions and creating that hatch. So you can see that you can get some pretty cool effects with this, and very easily, just by selecting one of these. Some are a little tighter, but you can see that some of these are kind of like a wave fill, and that's basically what it is in all honesty. But sometimes you can have two different create like that hatch, the cross hatch. So it's a pretty cool feature. You can play around with. You'll see that there are other options here. So this is set at line. So you can imagine you could come in and select different motifs and stuff like that. I could do straight, and then you can see how that works. You can just play around with it quite a bit. I'm going to go back to a wave, and I'm going to go back to a line, hit apply, and you'll see it gets back to that. So those are the different things that you can fill these shapes with when it comes to like more of your standard fill type patterns. So you have the standard, you have the fancy fill, the motif, the gradients, color blends, waves, wave gradients, wave color blends, and the mesh. So it's pretty cool. And I'm kind of excited here, and just for fun, you can see that if I'm in a fill stitch, I don't get that bean effect. So let's see what happens here. If I go to this mesh fill, you can see that I do get it here. So a bean fill will be much thicker, so you wouldn't want a tight density. But let's say a 3-ply is going to be a couple times more thick than a standard run. So if I wanted to go to like a 1.2 in the density, you'll see that that was stitch length. I'm sorry, 2.5. If I go to the density and I do like a 1.4, let's say, and hit apply, you can see that it's a lot more dense. It's still open though. It's not that tight. I mean, if I look at the density, it is set at 1.5. So, but with that, I could come in here and I could do a 3-ply bean, for instance, and that's going to make it fill in probably a 1.2 to 1.4 is going to give you like a full in fill look, but it's going to make that with a bean stitch. So it's going to give it more of like you're using thick thread. So it'll give it a whole different look. I don't know, hopefully I'm giving you some ideas there, but that's pretty cool. And the reason that you're able to do that is because we can do bean stitches to runs. And with this, now utilizing those beans, it's a pretty cool effect. Now I'm basically, getting the ability to create fills with these, like a bean stitch. Now let's take a look at something else here. If I come over here, I can even randomize by line, and that's going to kind of affect that fill too. I'm anxious to play around with this. This is something that could be pretty cool. And you could get some pretty cool effects. The only thing that it's missing is if I come in here to the run stitch and I go and I convert this to a run. If I come into a bean, now you have the ability to do like random stitch lengths or random amounts of beans, and that's it's in an update. In the latest update, you can have it do a 3-ply and then do a 5-ply and then 11 and then back to 3. You can just really kind of change how many beans are done each time. And it's a pretty cool effect. Now you can't do that with these fills. And again, it has to be something that's more like like one of these mesh lines here, and you can go in there and turn it into a bean. It's pretty cool. I can't wait to play with it. Anyways, we'll see you in the next video.